Hey everybody, welcome back to the Find and Follow podcast, where we are all about helping you find and follow Jesus in your everyday life. Kyle and Scott, your hosts today. I've got good news, bad news, good news, Kyle.
Good news, bad news, good news.
Yeah.
Is that a bad news sandwich? Because the bad news is in the middle.
Yeah, that's how you're supposed to do things.
Yeah.
So it depends on how you look at it.
But we always, when we say those things, we say it's like a good news sandwich, but you don't talk about a sandwich based on the bread. You talk about a sandwich based on the insides.
What if it's a phenomenal bread?
Yeah.
And it's really like mediocre in the middle?
I mean, you could talk about it like a grilled cheese, but it's a sourdough grilled cheese, so the sourdough is the emphasis.
Yeah.
The grilled cheese is
lead
just
with
cheese.
the sourdough. Yeah, if it's just cheese, I ain't eating it. I ain't
eating it.
But if it's really good cheese. Anyways, my point being, two good things, one not so good.
Okay, hit me with the bad one first.
No, you're gonna. This is the whole
But
point.
then if you front load the bad, then it's just good news from then on out.
But sometimes if you start with the bad, the people
Then
don't
you'll
hear
lose
the
my-
good.
yeah.
They're just like spiraling.
Okay, so give me the first good.
The good news is this: for those people listening, it's not even really for you.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, it's for the listeners, the people tuning in, watching.
Okay, good news.
Good news is this: if they tuned in and they don't want to hear about the Zags, the good news is we're not going to talk about the Zags a whole lot. It is Zag season, and it's November, so we can't get too much too early on that. So we're not going to talk about them a lot. So those listening and going, yay, like, what's a Zag? Who cares? Basketball? Eh. Bad news is because they got embarrassed last night.
So you're going to talk about it.
And they're going to redeem themselves totally on Sunday against Kentucky.
Okay.
So that's the
good
other
news?
That's the
Okay.
other good news. And then the real good news, bonus good news, like a pickle on the side type good news. No?
No. I mean,
Dude, if you go to a sandwich place and the pickle is off the charts.
here's the first
Oh,
thing is
wow.
we're talking about sandwiches. I'm not a sandwich guy. I kind of used to be.
It could
but,
be like a Philly cheesesteak. I
Yeah.
put that in the sandwich category.
Yeah.
It could be like a tri-tip sandwich.
Yeah.
That is a sandwich.
But I'd rather have the tri-tip without
like
the bread.
Not like basic turkey from the deli sandwich. Yeah.
Anyway, pickle. Okay, sure.
Man, people on YouTube right now, I think, are going to comment below like, the pickle, isn't it a big thing? Like, have a really good pickle on the side. You go places and it's like a thing. Am I the only one that loves a good pickle?
No,
There's got to be people listening.
Yeah, they're for
Anyways,
sure.
That's not even the bonus. The bonus good news is this: we're going to jump into Unoffendable today, and I think because it's such a large topic, we've heard from so many people the last couple of weeks in this new series, which is nothing new at all, because there's nothing new under the sun. But the idea that, and the truth is, offenses are going to happen. We're going to get our feelings hurt. Stuff's going to happen to us. There's pain. There's conflict. There's just a lot of stuff. We'll put it in the big stuff category. And what do we do with that? Jesus invites us into the beautiful way of life to live unoffended, and how difficult that is. And sometimes it's like it's not our reality, but it is possible, and it is what we're supposed to do as Jesus followers. And so it's just such a relevant thing. We're going to take a few minutes today, dive into some of the stuff that we wish we could maybe cover more fully, or in a dialogue conversation here through message series. And a little sneak peeky. If you listened to this before,
Sneaky peek.
what's
The 20.
it's the 20th?
20th.
Today's the 17th.
Yep,
Yeah. All right.
20th.
Before the 20th of November, a little peek into some of the practical nuts and bolts. So
Yeah, 'cause
this is a huge issue.
Yeah, and it's way easier in this kind of conversation, right? Like it's. I heard someone talk about it the other day when they were saying it, that they wish I wish I could sit down and have like 200 cups of coffee instead of speaking to 200 people on Sunday morning and saying it's a lot of coffee.
I was like, it's got to be really good cups of coffee.
Wish I could have face-to-face interactions and talk through it, because it's sticky, it's difficult, it's messy, it's complicated. Like you said, there's emotions and people and stuff involved.
And here's the risky part with that too. Ready? This is a thing that's been going around in my heart and mind for quite a while now. Is a conversation about it isn't even it.
Not even close.
And even listening to a podcast about being unoffended and a message and even reading scripture about it is not actually it. The thing that actually transforms us is Jesus hits us with this in this whole realm, but like way up front in his teaching, and probably throughout his entire teaching, Luke chapter 6. But I tell you who hear me. I'm going to read it. Hold on. I'm going to read out of the not out of the NIV. I like the NLT, just the phrasing of it. But he leads with like, hey, if you got ears to hear, we've talked about that many a times. Hey, listen up. If you got spiritual ears, pay attention. If you want to live life differently, if you want to change, if you want to follow Jesus genuinely, truly, he says it this way, verse 27. But to you who are willing to listen, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who hurt you. I mean, he's just rolling it, right? If someone slaps you on one cheek, offer the other cheek also. If someone demands your coat, offer your shirt also. Give to anyone who asks, and when things are taken away from you, don't try to get them back. And then we love to quote this verse kind of out of this context. Do to others as you would like them to do to you. Like, we don't put it in the offended category. Like, do to others what you want them to do to you. Usually we're trying to help correct someone and say, hey, be nice. If you want people to be nice to you, if you're trying to get something, leverage the situation. Be nice so you get something back. So he, just right up front, like, pray for the people who offend us. I'm good with, like, avoid the people who offend us. I'm good with, like, write them off, disregard them, hold a bit of resentment towards them, but don't express it. I'm good with a lot of those things.
Yeah, I heard,
but not pray for.
I heard it phrased this
them.
way this week as I'm diving into this, like, that if God would ask us this question, like, do you think restoration and reconciliation is ever a bad thing? And to God, it's no. Restoration and reconciliation is a beautiful thing. But for us, sometimes we're like, I don't want restoration. I want them to pay. I want them to suffer. I want them to be miserable. Like, the worst, I think the worst thing that someone's done to you, you're like, I don't want to be restored, or, and not that it always happens, but that our approach from that wouldn't be like, yeah, that's the best thing that could happen, is that they would be restored, I would be restored, we would be restored, that there would be restoration. And it doesn't always happen that way, and obviously there's two sides to everything. Mm-hmm. But, like, what if we actually approached it? Like, prayed for our enemies. I prayed that the best thing would happen to them.
Yeah. And that's what Jesus is not offering either. It's like, oh, hey, if you really want to get back at them, just kind of pray with them with, like, some snarkiness. Or, you know what I'm saying? Jesus isn't an offer of, like, smile up front and then stab them in the back.
I don't know if this would be helpful, but
he's like, bless those who curse you. Great. I will smile and pretend like I'm a Christian and be like, oh, bless you. I'm so glad to see you. With the face. Podcast listeners can see that, right? We're like, oh, it's so good to see you. And inside you're going, I hate your stinking guts. Little Rascals reference right there.
What about...
So he's not offering like this false Christian way. He's saying genuinely from down deep, like, pray for those who hurt you. Pray for them so your heart's changed, so that their heart is changed. Because obviously they got something going on. Like, are you kidding me? This just, as we talk about it again out loud, like,
are you kidding me?
This seems impossible. But yet it's such a huge thing for all of us. Paul pick up any one of Paul's letters and read through it. Like, it's in there somewhere. You've been hurt, your anger, like how to love one another, how to care for each other, how to put others' interests above your own. You had this verse week 1, James 1:20, in your first message a couple weeks ago. Human anger does not produce the righteousness God desires. Getting back at people, vengeance, cursing people, hating on people, having mild resentment, holding on to things like down deep, but I'm just going to not express it, so therefore it's okay type living. Jesus says, listen, hey, if you're willing to listen and change, that kind of human anger, it's not going to produce the thing God desires, which then therefore means the thing that we desire as image bearers of our Heavenly Father. Yeah. Man, I feel like we came out of the gates pretty hot this morning on this. Like, people listening and going, where's that normal chit-chatty banter about...
we weren't going to talk about the zags. We talked about sandwiches. We started with sandwiches and
we did
pickles,
talk about pickles.
And then
I don't know. I just think
in.
it's such a huge thing in to the discipline to choose to forgive, let go of anger, to love, and to have joy in the whole process is the way of Jesus, and it's wonderful and it's life-giving. It's extremely hard.
I was going to say, but it's real hard.
And that's why we need to live by the power of the Holy Spirit. This is not something we can do on our own. But to be a person who's known for love and joy and kindness and patience with people, easy to talk about on a podcast. Challenging, like for me this morning, I had to pray for my enemy.
The Texans. Why did I want to say the Texans?
The Texans.
Everybody who lives
All
in
people in
Texas.
Texas. How many people is
The
that?
Texas Longhorns? Is that,
No, they're not my
okay.
enemies. No, legit, like real, like, situation where my first thing was to be hurt and like, how dare you? And especially in light of what I did for you last week, and you owe me, and this is wrong, and this is rude. And then in the midst of like prepping for a podcast, and this is all rolling around, like God's like, I don't know, pray for him. He didn't say it like that. He's like, come on, like God doesn't have a like sarcastic college buddy tone. That's me, my imitation of God. But him just going, how about you pray for them genuinely, not flippantly, and like, well, Jesus told me to pray for him. There's a shallowness there to our relationship with Jesus. And God, you're not going to experience the love and the joy and the peace, the fruit of the Spirit that God offers by just kind of halfway doing this stuff, living mildly offended and going, wow, why do I feel agitated, just kind of in the background a lot.
Yeah, it's bad for your soul. It's poison. It's cancer. It's terrible holding on to this anger. And again, I talked a lot about it that first week, and just not that it doesn't produce what God wants for you, but it hurts your life. It hurts your relationships. It just destroys. And we think that holding on to this anger motivates us. And really where I took it is because I think for a lot of times, specifically as kind of self-righteous Christians, we think that this anger is a good thing.
Yeah.
That
Talking
it's
to about the motivator, right? That's a good way to phrase it.
I have this righteous anger, and I get angry at the world or the way that those people are doing things, and I'm angry on God's behalf. And then I turn into this like defender of God's truth and standing for what is quote unquote right. And we do it with this motivator of anger. Like, I'm mad at those stupid people for those stupid things. I think of Melanie Hall's story, who she shared a few weeks ago, that really resonated with me. When I first became a Christian, I got angry at all my friends who weren't doing the right Christian things. And I thought I was pumped up because of it. Like, yeah, God, thanks for making me angry at all these stupid people, because you look at them and see their stupid sin, and I'm here now, and I'm better because you've made me righteous through your blood. And now I got to be angry and tell them to stop smoking weed, right? I got to tell them to stop sleeping with their girlfriend because I'm not, and I'm better. And I'm just like, what a stupid perspective to have.
But very common.
Yeah, very common.
And then when you put it in the, like, I got hurt by that person category and got offended, then you even feel more of a quote-unquote right to respond in that way. Because not only am I'm on God's team and his defense lawyer, but now I have a personal offense. I've got an attack. Or you hurt my friend, so I'm going to stick up for them, and so I'm going to take on their offense. But anger isn't a great motivator at all.
It's a terrible motivator.
And if that might be helpful and refreshing for us to just sit with that, going, oh, what is my motivation right now? Get back at them. We use different terms to trick ourselves.
Get justice,
like
make things right.
Yeah, when Jesus says pray for your enemies, you're like, I don't have enemies. Like, are you in conflict with anybody? You in a disagreement? You opposed in any little bit of way? Like, God isn't just saying this to like national leaders who are at war, country to country. Like, there's an enemy. It's like your friend, your best friend. You're like, you guys at odds with each other? You have some conflict, some opposition with your spouse, with your adult parent, with your kid, with a coworker. There's an enemy there where you have some opposition. And Jesus is not advocating for like, let's have more enemies or create enemies. He's like, let's resolve, let's have restitution with our enemies. And the way to do that is to bless them, pray for them, love them from the depth of who we are. And that has to come from being new in Christ, being a changed person. Let's talk about that as far as like how forgiveness comes into play with that. Because it's like, okay, get rid of the anger, let it go. But we need to replace it, I think, with something. Not just get rid of something, but add something. You said this verse too, Proverbs 10:12 in the first week. Hatred stirs up quarrels, but love makes up for all offenses, like covers it, like it didn't happen, makes up for. Um, in the vein of forgiveness, what that means. So for someone who maybe hasn't listened into the messages, which I don't know who those people are. What are you doing? You watching Yellowstone or something on the?
Nope.
What's happening? I don't know.
Netflix.
I was just trying to say something popular, so I seem popular.
Stranger Things.
I just try to talk about things.
Yeah.
I use big words too that I don't
Yeah.
understand, so I sound more hemoglobin.
That's good.
But anyways, forgiveness. Talk to us about that.
I've been really intentional with this series specifically that each week builds off of each other. I could have done it all in 1 week. I couldn't have. But
we didn't have 3 hours. I mean, we do have 3 hours.
If you
we weren't hanging around for 3 hours.
But it's really, it's 3 points that I'm doing, and I'm breaking them down because each point could be a series. To your point, we don't have 3 hours, but then we get rid of anger.
Need more points.
That we get rid of anger, then we step into forgiveness, and then we actually deal with it with the restoration, which is where we'll go this week. But yeah, the first thing we have to do is get rid of the anger as our motivator, and get rid of this self-righteousness and all of this stuff. Motivated by love, understand that love and restoration and reconciliation is the goal. So that's love, week 1, that we get rid of the anger. Then we move into forgiveness, that we actually have to, our heart position towards somebody has to change. That even though I'm not angry anymore, I'm not like fuming and I'm not trying to get back at them. That's the first step, and that's the thing, and that's where we need to go. But then there's this part where but my heart is still, I still view that enemy, that person, as a terrible person. Again, I'll just, if Scott is my enemy on other side of me in an issue, he hurt my feelings, and my heart is still viewing him as this liar who's.
Hey, I invited you to the party. Okay, do we need to get through it again?
We could talk about you called me an idiot. Okay, let's go real life scenario.
Okay.
And so my heart position towards you deep down, even though I'm not motivated by anger anymore. Like I say, I love you and I care about you and I want what's best for you, but I still, you look at them and it pops back into your mind that one time they did that thing, or I really haven't let it go. I haven't actually turned my heart position towards them and actually viewed them as a person of love.
Yeah, you said this analogy I think was helpful is you keep it and you store it for when quote unquote you need it. Yeah. You put it in a Rubbermaid bin, put it on the shelf, and you got this whole shelvery of stored items with people's names on it. Like, oh, yep, let me go to the Scott bin because I'm going to need it now. And I got this whole bucket, this whole bin of here's offenses, here's hurts, here's when you didn't say you're sorry, here's when you should have done the thing, you should have called, like you knew I was going through a hard time and you didn't call, and here's when you,
Yeah, like hypothetically, how often does that happen in marriage, right? Like, yeah, that thing 2 years ago, you said those things, and like you always do this, you never do this. And it's like, you never actually forgave me for that, did you? Because now I'm bringing it back up in another argument. I mean, hypothetically, it never happens in anybody's home who's listening, or in either of our homes, right? But it's like, wait a minute, did that actually get let go? I mean, again, I've dug into the Greek about it, right? That the Greek language for letting something go and forgiving is the same exact word. You let go of something you're holding. I'm holding my phone, I let it go. I'm holding something against Scott. I let it go. I'm not holding it anymore. They don't have a different word for forgive. The same word is let it go. Like the Bible has other that uses that same word in like letting somebody go away on a trip, all that kind of stuff. Like you actually let it go.
You release them from owing you anything.
Yep.
And it's just hard because it's constant. It happens all the time. And we conflate it with, if I release them from owing me anything, meaning it could be a situation where I'm waiting for them to just say sorry. Like you've got to that point. Like I just want them to acknowledge they did the offense and they would say sorry and I will be fine. Like, you've journeyed so long and like, okay, they're going to restore and they're going to come back and they're going to want to, do all this stuff. And you're like, I'm down to bare bones, man. I'm out. Like if they can just say, yep, I was wrong. I was the one who hurt and I'm sorry. Then you're like, I will be fine. And you're holding on to that. And that's how we get, I think, a lot of times. Like it starts really big, and then as time goes on, like they're not doing anything. So get down to like the bare bones. And God's like, forgive. To the just like they have to acknowledge it and owe you something. Like forgive that. Like release some of that. Then we conflate it with like, then I'm gonna feel like I'm validating their action. And that I'm saying what you did was fine, and you have permission to do it again. And I'm a doormat, and I got no backbone and no boundaries. So if I forgive, I'm approving of your actions and your lifestyle or whatever the case may be. And
letting you off the hook of your punishment or
There's no
penalties or
responsibility.
consequences. Again, we conflate the idea of forgiveness with restoration or reconciliation. Forgiveness only takes one person. I forgive you. It only takes one person. Again, for me to forgive you, you don't even have to ask that you're sorry. A lot of times we want that to happen, and that's where we get into the step of restoration. We'll talk a little bit about this, but forgiveness takes one. Like there's scenarios that will not restoration and reconciliation will not be possible because the other person on the other side of the fence is not down for it. But that doesn't have to happen for me to let go of my issues towards you. I can forgive you and still never be in the same room with you. You can forgive someone and still have healthy, appropriate boundaries to not be abused again. And that's where it gets really difficult and really emotional and because there's wounds, there's scars that are really, really big deal. It's not just, we talk about it and use analogies as like a Rubbermaid, but like it's like, yeah, but what I'm putting in there is like the most heinous thing that's ever happened. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, it's terrible and horrendous, the things that we as humans do to each other. So we'll talk a little bit about that this week as we dive into it. But forgiveness just takes me turning my heart, letting it go, and with the help of the Holy Spirit, maybe giving it to God and going, God, this is ridiculous, and it's hard for me to turn my heart. But when you saw the sins of the world, you did that, and you asked me to do the same thing.
Yep, and that's that choice, that discipline, that practice. Offenses are an event. Living offended is a choice. And it's a choice each and every day where we want to acknowledge it or not, like consciously. You wake up again the next day like, okay, I'm choosing today again to live offended and to hold that in and wait for them to resolve. Like even when you said, forgiveness is a one-person act, I'm like, oh. Like it's so against the grain. I'm like, is it though? Does it take? No, it takes two people. Like in a relationship, but there's 2 or 3 or 17 people. Like, you know what I mean? It catches you up to like, go, is it really? And to do it. And to do it, I do think it is. But it's so tied to relational restoration, and it's so tied to we hold on to it, I think, for the most part, because that offense happens with a person or people that are close to us, and we desire that closeness again and want that intimacy and want it to be even better than it has been. And so, if I don't remember the people who cut me off in traffic 30 years ago. That's too long. 20 years ago. Nobody this morning.
Oh,
but like the root people.
It was a gray Honda on the way from Liberty Lake here that almost hit me.
Yeah, and again, you don't know them.
I don't know them.
But if you were to even have an interaction, a drive-by.
But I did the glare.
You did the
and
glare?
Lindsay hates when I do the glare.
You're like, I saw you, buddy.
I do it all the time. Like if they're driving slow in the left lane, and I'm just making it. She hates it.
They're
going to kill us. Or someone's going to road rage, pull out a gun, and shoot you. So if she's driving with me, she goes, when we do, she goes, don't do the glare. I'm like, I'm going to do the glare.
And then you're going to offend your wife.
Yeah, and then I offend my
you have
wife,
this offense that is inside your vehicle.
Can you just not do the glare? Oh, yeah, we're going to talk about it this week. Then we pick up other people's offense. But yeah, and here's what I'm even more realizing. Matthew 18 is really where we've been diving into this, forgiveness and all this kind of stuff. But the way that works, Scott, because you're saying it is the same thing, like what I've realized...
It's not the same thing. They're just so close that they're
feels related,
the same.
Because Jesus talks about them the same. I mean, we're going to...
Because to make sure I'm being clear, Christ forgave us on the cross, and it was a one way on that. He said, all have sinned, fall short. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And so it was him going, I forgive, you don't owe for this, because you could never pay for it. There is nothing you could do to make restoration. There's a brokenness that only God could restore. And so it is a one person act, one God thing, you know. And when Paul, like the crazy depth on that, when Paul wrote that while we were still sinners, we read that as like, oh, before Christ. He literally was still sinning and anti-Christ while Christ was doing stuff on earth, and he was like anti-Jesus followers and trying to kill them. So while he was doing that, Christ was busy on the cross over here, and he is anti-Jesus literally at the same time.
Yeah, like I'm persecuting this person, literally, physically. He's persecuting Jesus. He's part of the religious elite that thinks Jesus is a wacko. He's literally persecuting Jesus and then persecutes the people who are choosing to follow him. And he's the guy who's right. Like, I literally hated this dude and everything he stood for and the people who came after him. Oh, and while I was that deep hatred in my heart, he died for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
He forgave me. Yep. He let me off the hook from owing he took away the penalty of my sins and offered this forgiveness of sins as a free gift of receiving God's grace through no works, so that no one can boast about it and claim they've done enough righteous to be right with God. So there's some tears that were on that papyrus or whatever he was writing on.
Pad and quill.
You know what I mean? Like just the depth of his soul to recognize that moment. So but Matthew 18.
Yeah, because I jumped into Peter's question about forgiveness and Jesus is 70 times 7, but that comes after.
I did notice that. Like you're like, I was like, oh, we're scanning down because I didn't know exactly what scriptures you were heading. I was like, where's? Oh, okay, he's going to come back around.
I'm going back up to the top this week.
We're going to start with the heart, and then we'll get to the practical.
Yeah, but even that, realizing that's in the context of before that is the 99 sheep and leaving the one, and again, because Jesus is couching all of this section in restoration, community, and relationships is so important and so difficult. But his point is that we would be connected and that we would be loving and that we would be in the community of Christ followers, images of Jesus, together, doing life together, loving one another. And so then, he's going to talk about, like, it's difficult. And so when someone wrongs you, here's how you take care of it. And, here's what Jesus did for you on the cross and forgiveness. And so I purposely did forgiveness so that we could come back up to this part because I think that again, first we had to turn our heart towards people and then understand that, okay, well, how do I actually deal with the offense that Scott did, with the practical part?
Yeah. So much of our world leads with the negative headline and the difficulties. We're probably just all conditioned from our sin nature, for one, I think. And then just the media, like if it bleeds, it leads, like, which is a horrible saying.
I've never heard that before.
You've never?
I don't watch the news, though. So
that's been around for like decades.
Well, you're
Are you
old,
joking?
So I've never heard if it bleeds, it leads.
Oh,
I've heard like sex sells and like.
Okay.
I've heard the idea that the worse it is, the more clicks and all that kind of stuff.
Correct.
But I've never heard if it bleeds,
it's chaos and it's catastrophe. Yeah, that's like an old, I feel like newspaper time. Where's Craig when I need him?
Yeah, I was gonna say you probably heard it from your dad. You guys are old. Sorry, never
old or more,
have you ever paid for a newspaper
or more educated? For sure.
Really,
dude. I was a paper delivery guy. I had 125 to 135 papers.
Were you one of your own clients?
My dad was.
See, my parents paid for the newspaper. I never. Did you ever in your adult life have like a paper subscription?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're old.
I am
old.
If
it bleeds, it leads, bro. Yeah, that's.
And I've been known to like the dispensers. You put it like $1.50 in, you get to like push the button, you get to open it and just take one
and
paper.
You can take 16 of them and
hand them out to your friends. Some of us are Jesus followers.
Oh, I know, but I never understood that. I mean, obviously the paper wasn't expensive.
It's called the honor system. We have like values.
Have you met the people in our world? There's offenses all the time.
I'm just talking about you right now.
Yeah, no, I've never bought one, but my thought with those things was always like, it's terrible marketing. Someone's just going to take 4. Yeah, but I guess you don't really need more than one newspaper.
Right? Unless you're like, I'll wrap my Christmas presents.
The only time I've ever gotten them is, I don't know, where we stay, like Holiday Inn Express. You get a free...
Yeah, the USA Today. Do
you want one of those? I think they ask you, would you like that? I'm like, yeah, I'm smart. Give me one of those.
Yeah, what's the red sections, the sports sections? I'll read that. Great.
If it bleeds, it leads.
That's how I was like, help me, because I don't know how we got off.
Yep.
Okay, so my point is this. maybe in the last few minutes we have on this episode is to talk about the positive side. Talk about the beauty of restoration. Talk about the regardless of the person who offended you, hurt you, their response, just the peace that comes in our hearts, the joy, even in the midst of, there can be sorrow and celebration in our souls at the same time, even in the midst of like, I'm so disappointed in this offense. They hurt me, this relationship. I grieve the brokenness that is there. At the same time, God, thank you for your Spirit who allows me to forgive and release them from owing anything and to choose joy and to choose love and to be motivated down deep from pray for them and love them, bless them, and not in a flippant, sarcastic, false way. We're like, oh yeah, I'm going to pray for them. I'm going to probably do something nice for them, but not really genuinely be changed from the inside out from our soul. Like we can celebrate and live in that. Plus, then God does so many amazing things where there is healing, there is restoration, there is, I mean, for everybody who's married, like you ever fight with your wife and then you make up, like, hey, that's pretty good. Like, hey, it can be real good. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's not like, oh, we should have more fights because then the makeup is good, but the beauty of connectedness, intimacy, a new level of depth of relationship, the new perseverance. Like, hey, I am still going to continue to follow Jesus, even when it's hard, even when I get offended, been hurt. I know that that's the foundation that I'm standing on. And then, like, there's an intimacy that happens with people and, like, a closeness together. Like, hey, we've been through some hard times, and it's going to be easier, I hope, Lord willing, the next time there's an offense, because it's going to happen.
Yeah, because we're going to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we're for, I think the marriage relationship is a really good thing to look at. But even like best friends, like
I didn't know what you were going to. It's a really good like testing ground for all this.
No,
like,
I was trying to.
It's a really
trying to think of
it
the
happens
words.
a lot.
Yeah, but
because you're together a lot.
But it helps us understand. Like, yeah, like I actually do care about the person, right? And I want this restoration. But like even in friend relationships, I can think of times where like our best friends in the world, like they've literally called us and say, "What? Why are we like?" Hey, there were some texts and misunderstandings, and like they like literally just a few months ago they called and say, "Hey, we're gonna talk about this because it's too important. Like we love each other way too much to be like I'm mad at you because you didn't invite me to this thing or whatever it is." You didn't, right? Like we're actually gonna talk about it and we're gonna deal with it so that on the other end, like we still have this intimacy of relationship and love and genuine. Because I'm not gonna let you just fester on it for 2 weeks. I'm gonna come and go, hey. Like, this is important. We need to talk about this because we care about each other too much. And the relationship is that important. And this community, again, that's why Jesus puts this all together, this 99 sheep, and the when people are gone and outside of community, it's terrible. And Jesus wants them in community and to be loved and cared for. It's the same thing as when somebody offends you got to deal with it because it's better to deal with these things and have this depth of relationship and community and love. And without it,
And it's those moments where someone says, I'm not going to put it in the Rubbermaid bin on the shelf and not let you know about it till the right time. When they bring it out to the light, it can be hard and difficult in the moment. But at the same time, for all of us, we celebrate, oh, they care enough. They value our friendship enough. They value the relationship enough to like bring it up and they want to be friends. Like there's the 5-year-old inside of all of us that goes, will you be my friend? You're like, oh, I'm so glad you asked. That if they were just a drift over time slowly, and then you're like, what happened to us? Like, oh, I've got a whole storage room downstairs in my heart that's got your name on it, and I've just been storing up all this stuff, and we just drifted over time. Like, oh, that's so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So the beauty of restoration, like, hey, we're friends. We're going to work through this. This is you're so important.
Yep.
Our
and for the
intimacy.
most part, like you said, it's terrible in the moment. I think for the most part. I mean, there is that part, but for most of us, we don't like that. It sucks.
Some of us do.
Yeah, it's true.
I process out loud, hence podcast. And in conflict, I'd rather just let's get it all out. Let's talk about it.
But I don't think
the
most
internalization of
I think
like
you have a
offenses.
little like sadistic. You like the pain, like you do an Iron Man. You're weird, right? Like there's something. Pain is gain. I don't know.
Pain's not gain. It's. I don't like pain in relationship, so to start to make a metaphor,
But that's what I'm saying. Like
is difficult.
In the moment, it's
but I
difficult.
don't disagree with you on the physical feats. Like, what does that feel like? Yeah, I just want to know.
Terrible.
No, but good.
No.
but like No, seriously, it's such a good feeling, like to run hard and fast.
I think you have a different chip in your brain or a short
I just think
circuit
everybody
thing.
thinks this way, and they just haven't unlocked it yet. If
Oh,
they
okay.
think differently, that,
Yeah, callous your mind, man.
if
Um,
anybody knows a good counselor listening in,
But
might need one.
But that again, I'm thinking about the literal conversation my friends have. Like it was
Yeah.
like for me and my wife, it was hard and more
Yes.
hard for my wife.
Yeah.
because she's like, I don't want to talk about it.
Right.
I'm mad.
Yeah, and there's tears.
Yeah,
and
I'm
it's
frustrated.
emotion.
It hurts. Like I don't want to deal with it. Like literally, they called and she's like, I don't want to talk to them.
Yeah, especially on that side where you're like, you didn't make the call.
Yeah.
Like you're not at a place to address it per se.
Yeah, and from our perspective, they were mean and they
They
were
were in the wrong.
right? Like they did something. And like I don't want to deal with it right now.
So if they would just come and say, I'm 100% responsible, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? You know.
Yeah. But they're like, hey, we're going to deal with this. And I was like, yeah. In that moment, I'm like, yeah, thank you. Like, we do need to deal with this, and we'll be better on the other end. But yeah, so in the moment for most of us, it's hard. It's difficult, but it's so worth it. And again, it's the way of Jesus that we have to deal with it, because not dealing with it is just going to ruin our relationship. I said it this way, week one. It's going to obviously build a fence in between us and the people on the other side of the relationship. The tragedy that you referenced, Scott, that it's like, 10 years down the road, you're like, where did those friends go? But it's also building a bridge between us and Jesus, because Jesus already died for it. He wants us to have a depth of relationship. He understands the importance of community. And so we're letting it get in between the intimacy that we experience with our Savior.
Right. And he calls us to forgive as we have been forgiven.
Yep.
And we have been forgiven totally, completely by Christ through no act of our own and in no responsiveness of our own, like we already covered. And that's our response to forgive others. And it's not optional as Jesus followers. You want to know if you're a Jesus follower? Like you live in the way of Jesus. And not in like work for your salvation way. It's in living from way. Or living from the forgiveness and the grace and the power of the Spirit that enables us, gives us the desire and the power to do the good things that please Him.
Man,
so,
I didn't get into it because I didn't have time, but in the research. And
that's why we're here.
In the preparing for the messages, just hearing so many stories of just like ridiculous forgiveness. Mm-hmm. I mean, like ridiculous, like tears, just like I cannot, like people who murdered families, like Rwanda genocide, and these people are like the story of a lady who's in a bathroom she lived in a bathroom in a pastor's house in a village while the Rwanda genocide was going on for I think 6 weeks. She lived in a room with 6 other people. It was 3x4, and like every day, every few days, people would come into this pastor's house looking for people that he was protecting. Hey, are you keeping anybody here? And she was sitting in this room, and her heart would just burn with anger. These people who she already knew, they killed her family, and now they're trying to come find her. And one day, the Lord spoke to her and said, I want you to forgive them like I've forgiven you. And I'm like, what? No, they can't, and then...
No, they owe you. You got to get revenge.
And then she, like, literally, she said she was burning with anger, and then she chose to forgive them. And she even went to the jail afterwards after this genocide stuff was over. And the jailer was like, hey, I'll give you a few minutes. Do whatever you want. Like, spit at them, beat them. He's like, I beat them every day. They're terrible people. And she's like, no, I came here to forgive them. And the jailer was mad at her. He's like, no, like these people killed our family. Like, she's like, no, I'm forgiving them. I came here to tell them that I'm forgiving them. It's like, what? Like, those types of stories are ridiculous.
Yeah, insane.
And it's like, and you're like,
it seems so unnatural.
Yeah. That's the way Jesus does it.
Yeah. And it's not, here's the sneaky part of it. It's not even the way to get back at them.
Yeah.
To go and like, here's how I'll get back at them. I'll walk up there and say, I forgive you. And that's how I will get back at them. It's not even that.
Yeah.
It doesn't come from that place. That place is anger.
Yep.
Disguised as forgiveness, disguised as like Jesus. And it's not. Here's the thing that this topic and this issue of forgiveness and anger and loving and praying for people who we're in conflict with and following Jesus to this level, life is not about me. Yep. When I hold on to anger and I hold on to unforgiveness, store that stuff up, I'm making life all about me. It is not about God. It is not about God's love and His design for the earth and His creation, for us to live in harmony with one another, have some shalom, peace with God and peace with the earth and with people. But I'm making it all about me in that moment, not about the people around me, and
we do that
not
with,
about God.
We do that with our faith, our
and that's
Christian
hard.
faith.
I don't, I want to make it about me a lot of times.
We do
it
that.
just feels right.
Again,
feels
we talk
good.
about forgiveness, and our relationship and our faith, we let Christianity be about what we get out of it, and it stops with us. And we go, this forgiveness thing is beautiful. I'm forgiven of everything. I shared a little bit on Sunday. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a terrible person, and the fact that I owe God bazillions of dollars worth of debt, and He said, no, your debt's forgiven. I could work every single day for the rest of my life trying to please and prove that I love God, and I would never pay Him back, ever. I could be a monk and just like sit there and like worship God all day long and do nothing else. And it wouldn't even come close to paying the debt that I owe God. And so we love this forgiveness that comes to us. And lots of times, like you say, Scott, we don't think this as a prideful thing and arrogant, but then it stops there. And we're like, oh, it's so great and I'm in a relationship with God. Like, no, it was never meant to stop with you. It was meant to transform your life, to get in your life so that it could go out and show the love of Jesus to those around you and to transform the world.
And the good news is the more that we follow Jesus and lean into the Holy Spirit's work in our life, this becomes easier and easier and easier, where we just go, I'm too tight with Jesus. Like, I'll have my moments, absolutely, but the closer you are with Jesus, the more soft your heart is. You pray for your enemy genuinely. It is so hard to have a hard heart. You want some compassion for people? Don't rant and rave and criticize and grumble and complain. Genuinely try praying for them from a place like, God, help my heart here. And your heart softens, and that's where you have compassion for people, empathy. You have, God, just even pray, God, help me to see them as you see them. Because they got some sort of hurt. They got some sort of trauma. They got something going on that's coming from inside of them. That's why that came out. And God will help shift your heart and change you. And then it's like, oh, yeah, it's hard to forgive. Great, it's a little bit easier. How do I like pre-forgive people? That's how I think about it a lot of times.
That unoffendable. Like, no,
Yep.
I'm just unoffendable. Like, you can't offend me. It's just
Yeah.
that it's not the new me with Jesus. And as I practice it, and it gets easier. I'm better at having a thick skin because it's Jesus transformed me.
I don't even think thick skin. I think soft heart.
Ooh, there you go.
Try to have a soft heart towards God, and it doesn't mean that you have no boundaries and get ran over by people and they can just do whatever. Because you look at the life of Christ, complete compassion and empathy for folks, and soft on the outside, but then hard on the outside at times to certain people, and never was taken advantage of, surrendered his own life. Like, just follow the way of Jesus. He wasn't a victim. He's a victor. And so it's possible. Yeah. I thought maybe this would be a shorter podcast, but good thing Craig wasn't here. He wouldn't have any room for words. But it's good. I mean, just
you really honestly think like, we don't have a lot to talk about?
no. I know there's plenty to talk about. Yeah, yeah. That's usually not. There are times in my life, surprisingly to most folks, but Scott needs some quiet time once in a while. But then, man, we get recharged and get fired up, because this is such a huge thing for us, man. Imagine how our society would be changed if people just let go of offenses and quit choosing to live offended. And then not only did that and like, oh, I'm going to be in neutral land. Nope. Then I'm going to put forgiveness in there, and then I'm going to work towards restoration and do the practical nuts and bolts. We didn't even get into it. Matthew 18, like, come this Sunday or tune in, go to that person first. Don't talk about it with other people, and don't gossip. Don't vent it online. Don't go to that person first and watch the miracle that Jesus will do there. Like, it's always astounding when people.
We've said it on the podcast, but we talk to people, not about people. And if I'm not going to talk to you, I'm not going to talk about you.
Right.
I'm not going to come to Scott and tell him about the issue I'm having with somebody else unless I go talk to that person. So,
yeah.
Come on Sunday. We're going to talk about that.
And then again, I'm trying to land the plane here, and then we just circle one more.
No, I had to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. As Jesus followers, if people come to us and they start with like, hey, I need to tell you about, or can I talk to you about? And you're like, I don't know, can you? Should you? Like, we need to interrupt people. We don't, quote unquote, being nice and then letting someone rant because, they just need to vent and get their emotions out for like 10 minutes. Sometimes, I'm not making a hard judgment, because sometimes that is valid. Sometimes it's just gossip, and we're entertaining it, and it kind of like it, and we kind of try to get on their team and get, we like taking
You
up
should
the
come
offense.
this Sunday. We're going to talk all about it. Because when we share the offense, Scott, can I share my offense with you? Will you carry it a little bit with me? That's what we want.
Yes.
And Scott, for us to be mature, go, nope, sorry, that's not my offense. You got to go deal with them.
And so when people, I don't know if I should tell you this, or man, can I talk to you? Like, I don't know. Do you need to? Like, what does Jesus want you to do with that?
WWJD, Scott. WWJD.
Yeah.
He
would love
I
first.
don't know that one.
Okay. Anyways.
Have a great week.
Yeah, I know this is relevant, big topic for all of us. I hope it's been helpful for you today, following Jesus genuinely and putting into practice the things that he's talking about. So don't get too fooled by like just listening to us two knuckleheads is it, but actually living unoffended today, choosing to forgive someone. For all of us, there's people in our hearts and lives right now as you're listening. God is saying, "Yep, you need to let go of that." You feel like they owe you, but you need to ask God, help me with the forgiveness. Release some of that, let it go, and then maybe take some action with them for restoration and healing. So we love you. We want to help you. Jesus loves you, and have a great week following him, living unoffended.